27% of the Bible is prophecy.
Yep.
It's important.
Yep.
You know, there's more things important than only prophecy, but prophecy is just not getting taught.
Yeah.
And connecting it to what's happening spiritually, geopolitically, economically, all that's important.
Let's do the shortest intro I can do. 5 million books later, you're an expert on geopolitical kind of situations with Israel, the United States, the way that fits in the world. We are in Jerusalem. This is the city God loves. What are we going to unpack tonight on this beautiful evening here in Jerusalem?
Well, great to be with you guys and honored to do this. Look, this is the most important city in the world. It's not Washington, it's not Beijing, it's not Moscow. You know, people have been saying for years that what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Nobody says that about Jerusalem. This is a city that's been conquered dozens of times. This is the city where Jesus came. This is where he died. This is where he rose again. That's where he's coming back. I don't know when, so don't go there tonight, but I hope it's soon. But this city impacts everybody in the world because this is where the gospel came from, and it affects all of our lives because so many wars and terrorist acts and other things have happened here. We've been praying for the peace of Jerusalem forever. It's starting to break out. We are starting to see some of the most dramatic peace movements ever, but Iran also wants to commit a second Holocaust. So this is the epicenter. This is the total focus of God's plan. And I would just add one more thing, which is God said in his scriptures multiple times, Israel is the apple of his eye. Yeah. If you go after my eye, I'm not going to be happy. Even if you're trying to help me, God's saying, do not come after my people, my country, my city. Love the neighbors, but don't come after the pupil of my eye, the apple of my eye. And I think the spiritual impact of the gospel going from here and the tension in this city is one of the most fascinating things I've ever experienced. And now I live here as a Jew, as an Israeli, as an American, as an evangelical follower of Jesus. And I am fascinated by this place.
Okay. I love the way you snuck in the title of one of your books in the intro.
I wasn't trying to, it just is. I didn't say book, but you're right. I did call this place Epicenter. I mean, you know, it's true.
So why do our viewers around the world, a lot or most, let's say in the United States, but many around the world, in Africa, other places, why does the things that happen in this city matter to them?
There's a couple ways to say it. First is Ezekiel chapter 5, verse 5. God says Jerusalem is the center of the nations. Okay. So geographically, God considers this the center of the world. He says, I said every other nation around it. In Ezekiel 38, God says, I'm going to bring, after I send my people into exile because of their sins, in the last days, I'm going to bring them back. I'm going to rebuild this nation as proof that I exist, that every atheist, every agnostic, every person, every young Christian who's not entirely sure if the Bible can be trusted, no, this is true. And the Bible is the only book in the world that says Israel will be resurrected as a country, that Jews will come back, that they will rebuild the ancient ruins, make the deserts bloom. All that has happened. So geographically, God says this is the center of the world, of the universe, as he sees it, which is really all that matters. But you add to that Acts chapter 1, right? This is where Jesus says to his followers, I'm going to pour out my Holy Spirit upon you to give you power. And you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem, in Judea, in Samaria, and to the very ends of the earth. Most people who are watching, I'm guessing, are at the ends of the earth compared to here. But the gospel started from here. It spread out to the ends of the earth. But most of the ends of the earth have been reached. And now God is beginning to turn history's attention back to this city, this place. This and the Muslim areas around it is the least reached from the perspective of the gospel, even though for 2,000 years, you know, Jesus came here and everything. But if Jews were the easiest people to reach with the gospel, it would be done by now. But it's not. But God is on the move. And if I just look at it geopolitically, it's fascinating to me, compelling, because of the threat from Iran of wiping us off the map, but also of peace that's breaking out after millions of us have been praying for the peace of Jerusalem for decades and thinking, okay, Lord, are you ever going to answer this prayer? You know, have you noticed we're doing what you ask and then we don't see it? Now we're seeing it, right? The Abraham Accords, extraordinary. But ultimately, it's the spiritual dynamic that's going on here. And Jews are starting to listen to the gospel more than they ever have, responding. And the same thing with Muslims. We're seeing more Muslims come to faith in the last 50 or 60 years than in the last 14 centuries combined. Wow. For 2,000 years, people didn't even come here. Mark Twain visited here once in the 1800s and wrote, look, there's beggars with sores on them. It's not a place to go. But now kings and crown princes and presidents and prime ministers are coming here because this is the center of the world.
Okay, let's get a couple of things straight here.
Okay.
Go ahead, babe. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, you're just a delight to be around.
That's very kind.
And your story, is just kind of riveting. Where you came from, how you even got to start your first book. I mean, that was just kind of an amazing thing that happened to you.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about that because it's fascinating, first of all. And then I think we've got some really good news to share with the TBN family tonight.
Let's get into and start unpacking a few things. I want to hear a little bit about that. But let's get a couple things straight.
Okay.
First of all,
get your cards on the table.
That's right.
First of all, this is really Jerusalem. This isn't a set,
no, that's right?
This is not a screen.
Beautiful.
We're not in Southern California with a screen, okay?
Right.
So right over your shoulder, Mount Zion, Mount Moriah, Mount Scopus, the Mount of Olives, and it is a beautiful evening. We are in the summer of 2022 as we are recording this. We've got some great news, by the way, that we're going to start talking about in a minute. But I like the idea that you're confirming this is real, right?
This is legit.
Okay.
We're really here. It's not a green screen or whatever you guys in TV call it. This is, and it's amazing to me. I lived in Washington. I raised my wife and I raised our 4 sons there, and we didn't get the spiritual gift of raising teenage daughters. Okay, so we just got sons. But
got it.
Love those boys, and love the ones that are raising the daughters that are marrying them.
Yes,
so,
amen.
But we lived in Washington D.C. For 24 years, and every time I drove into D.C., I thought, wow, it's a crazy, toxic, messed up city, but it's beautiful, it's historic. I couldn't believe I lived there. That was nothing.
Wow.
That was nothing. I actually live here. I have 2 sons that have served in the Israeli army, one in a special forces unit. We live here. This is where we go get a little too much baklava. Okay, I've lived in Israel for 7 years. Unfortunately, Laurie, Matt, it's been the 7 fat years. Okay, so I'm just saying that I'm hoping the next 7 are the 7 lean years because this isn't going to work. But they have really good baklava here and hummus too. And every time I walk through the old city of Jerusalem, there's sheep walking and goats walking down the street, like shepherds and people in out of central casting. You think Jesus and the disciples could walk around this corner at any moment and you'd be like, dude. I mean, you probably wouldn't say dude. But
I love you.
It is just an amazing place to live. Yeah. It's been weird for the last 2 years because of COVID. It's been like living in the Magic Kingdom without any tourists. There's nobody was here. It was great for traffic, but it was really sad. But it's reopening. You guys are here.
Completely reopened. Come to Israel.
Amen.
It's time.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to hint to something. We're going to have more content from you, and welcome to the TBN family.
Yeah.
I'm honored to be here, Matt. Thank
Seriously.
you very much. Yeah.
This is a great honor.
fun.
Okay. Start back with this crazy story. I feel like begins with a horrible political campaign gone wrong.
Oh my
What am I talking about
Just
here?
one?
Yeah.
Okay, so when my wife and I got married in the summer of 1990, we moved to Washington, D.C. And we were just kids right out of college and fun to get married at that young age. And I went into politics, and I was apparently horrible at it because every single person I worked for lost or quit in disgust, or if they did well, it was years after I was involved. Well, you're laughing because that's not your resume. But if it was, you'd be like, that is not funny at all. It was painful. My last candidate that I worked for, I was hired on the comeback campaign team of Benjamin Netanyahu. Okay. He'd been the prime minister of Israel from 1996 to 1999. He lost his re-election. And about a year and a half later, he thought, no, I'm coming back. And he started putting together a team of Israelis. I was not an Israeli yet, but also of American political consultants. And I got hired. Very junior. I only worked for him a few months. It's not like we were close. But it was interesting to me. I was like, I'm getting to work for the once and probably future prime minister of Israel. I'm a little Jewish believer in Jesus from a little town of 5,000 people in upstate New York. Like, there's no reason for this. Well, okay, that lasted for a couple months because he didn't come back for 9 more years. I play no help. And I finally said to my wife, I got it. This is crazy. What am I doing with my life? Like 10 years, I could have gone to seminary. I could have gone to graduate school. I could have learned multiple languages. Well, I probably couldn't have, but somebody could have in that time. I got to figure out what to do. And unfortunately, as I reminded my lovely Gentile wife, Spirit-filled wife, I said, I'm one of the few Jews born and raised in America, didn't get the financial gene. Okay? I'm not your hedge fund manager. I'm not your stockbroker. I'm not your CPA. Moreover, I'm not your lawyer, your doctor, your chiropractor, or the head of a movie studio. I'm a little bitter. I literally have no... God has given the Jewish people some great skill sets. I'm not a violinist. I'm not a concert pianist.
Oh, my God.
I know,
Lord,
but your
seriously.
future looks so bright.
Well, it was
new
grim,
day,
and
Joel.
I basically realized that the only thing I know how to do is make things up. And I thought, is there a job for that? I mean, I could be a journalist to write fake news, but I thought that was unethical. So
It still
I
is.
basically, ever since I was 8, that's a
All
legitimate.
these guys think it's
wedding
funny
going
too.
on. Yeah, they're like, dude.
They're agreeing.
Ever since I was 8 years old, the thing that I wanted to do was write novels or movies. I don't know
Okay.
why
You
at
were
8.
little.
Yeah. So I grew up with 2 loves, James Bond and Jesus.
Okay.
And in that order, unfortunately. It's changed over time. But I thought, I said to my wife, I want to try to write a novel, a political thriller. Maybe that's why I was in politics for 10 years. I don't know. There's no other fruit from this. Okay, she said, okay. Now, she's very supportive of me. But she said, okay, we do have little children to feed. Like, don't go crazy. Like, why don't you write 3 chapters and see if you can wow me. If you can wow me, we'll go find an agent, whatever. But, it better... have you ever written a novel? No.
Not me.
Have you ever learned how to write a novel? No. Do you even read novels? Mostly no. Do you have a story? No. Well, then I wouldn't get, don't hold your breath, don't go all in, whatever.
Sounds like a comedy act
Well-
to me. I mean, but it turns
It's
out
all
pretty
true.
good.
The sad thing is that it's all true.
Jeez.
Wasn't funny at the time.
So this was January of 2001, right? Fall of 2000, I'd helped BB go nowhere. Now it's January 01. So I have a little time, a little bit of savings. I write 3 chapters. The first page puts you inside the cockpit of a jet plane that's been hijacked by radical Islamist terrorists. It's coming in on a kamikaze attack mission into an American city. Now, this is almost 9 months before September 11th, 2001, right? This is January. That's going to happen in September. I don't know that's going to happen. I'm not predicting it. I'm just thinking that'd be a really scary opening for a thriller, and maybe my wife will think, okay, you've got my attention, right? Got to hook them. A James Bond opening, I would call it. I sent that. She was like, whoa, you know how to write. Who knew? I'm like, okay, well, thank you. But I sent that to a friend. She said, oh my gosh, this is going to be a big hit. This is going to be a movie. I'm sending it to my agent. The agent calls me and says, this is amazing, but I only represent women. But you need Tom Clancy's agent. I said, of course, sure. Who doesn't need Tom Clancy's agent, right?
Jeez.
Absolutely. She goes, no, I've already sent it to him. You're going to get a call. So the short version is, I got a call, and they said, this is amazing, send us the rest. I said, the rest? There's no rest. I'm spitballing. This is 3 chapters. I have nothing else. They said, well, clear your schedule, write this novel. If it holds up, we will represent you. This is the world's leading thriller agency, literary agency. So I write this novel that starts with the kamikaze attack, right? I've already written that part. It leads to my fictional American president deciding to remove Saddam Hussein from power in Iraq because of his connection to terrorism and weapons of mass destruction.
Oh, come on.
Now, I was finishing that on the morning of 9/11. What has just happened? My whole world had changed. The whole world had changed.
That actually happened to you.
That actually happened. The morning of 9/11, I was finishing that novel, just a couple chapters to the end, in Washington, D.C., 15 minutes away from Washington Dulles Airport. At that moment, I wasn't listening to TV or radio. At that moment, Flight 77 was being hijacked flown over our house and into the Pentagon.
My goodness.
And everything changed. And of course, we couldn't sell the novel at that point. You couldn't send a manuscript to Manhattan, where all the literary agencies and publishers are. It was a smoldering wreckage. Yeah. People were horrified and traumatized. So I had to throw it in the drawer and go, okay, Lord, I really don't get your plan for my life. I'm a failure in politics. I've taken 9 months and most of my savings to write a novel that can never be published. I really don't understand your plan for me. I'm sure that you have one, but you're keeping it pretty hidden, you know? So if you could just, just
throw me a bone.
Pony up, like hell, I'll just do whatever. But, I thought of myself as the little boy with the loaves and fishes, like just take it, break it, bless it, break it, and use it for something, because I'm not going to save the world from cancer. I don't have these skills. I'm not going to, the fact that God knew, if he could have just hinted a little earlier, it's okay, just stay on this track. I'm guiding you. It doesn't look that way, but I am. And you're going to sell 5 million copies of your books.
My goodness. You're
going to be invited to spend 5 days with the King of Jordan because he ends up reading one of your novels.
Come on.
And rather than banning you from the kingdom forever because you tried to assassinate him in the novel, and you used him by name, rather than ban you, he invites you to come with your wife for 5 days to get to know him and his team, to end up meeting with most of the leaders of the region, the kings, the crown princes, the presidents, the prime ministers. It doesn't make sense. I was told by a very senior Israeli official, Joel, do you realize you're the only Israeli ever to publicly meet with the leader of Saudi Arabia?
My goodness.
Like, that's not normal. Like, they put you on the front page of the papers. They invited you as an evangelical, knowing you're an Israeli, knowing you're Jewish. You brought one of your sons that had served in the army. And this delegation of evangelical leaders that I brought was the first group of Christian leaders in 300 years, they told me, to ever be invited into the palace in Saudi Arabia. That's just one example, but I'm just saying what has happened from total failure is God was wringing out of me a lot of dreams and ambitions and saying, okay, are we done with this now? Because I have a plan and I want you to come with me, but I just want to be super clear.
Yeah.
It ain't you. Like, I should quote scripture right now rather than Chevy Chase, but like it was like God was saying, I'm God and you're not. Yeah. So just let me do this. I'm not looking for a strategist. I'm looking for a servant who understands how little he brings to the table. Oh. That's me in a nutshell.
How did the book that sounded like you were writing it after 9/11, 2001, how did you get that prophetic manuscript out? What was the mechanism? Because at the time, you threw it in a drawer, then what happened?
Well, first I had to go to one of the young guys that I was discipling and ask him for a loan of $5,000 to make my rent and food for the next couple months. I was like, this is how bad it was. But what happened was President George W. Bush, as he was dealing with Afghanistan and Al-Qaeda, gave his famous State of the Union address in February, I believe, of 2002. And he famously said, we face an axis of evil. He described North Korea, he described Iran, and he described Iraq. And what he said in that speech made everybody in the country and the world go, that guy might go to war with Iraq. Like, Iraq was his focus. And suddenly my literary agent, calls me and he says, do you work for the CIA? I said, what? He goes, do you work for the Central Intelligence Agency? I said, no, what are you talking about? He goes, what am I talking about? You write a novel that opens with a radical Islamist terror cell hijacking a plane and flying it into American City. Okay, some of the details were different, but nobody has written a novel like that ever. And then the story leads to an American president taking Saddam Hussein out. Like, that's not normal. I said, well, I appreciate that, but no, I don't work for the CIA. If you knew my life, you would know nobody in the CIA is hiring me for anything. He goes, well, that's what you'd have to say if you did work for the CIA, and you just couldn't tell me. I said, well. So he said, everything's just changed. Because of that speech, I'm going to go to publishers and I'm going to say, this is a book you need, and you need it right now, because every thriller writer in the world and we represent most of them. He said, they all had to wake up on 9/12, 9/13, 9/14, and to say,
a reset.
How do I? Yeah, a reset. What do I write about now? They were all doing Cold War stories, thrillers based on Russia and spies. And he said, you're the only person that's doing this. And within weeks, he had a deal. And of course, I had my little boys every night praying, I need an agent, I need a publisher. They're like, what's a publisher? You know, and we had to describe these.
I need some money.
Well, yeah, that too, right? And we used the verse Jeremiah 33:3.
Wow.
From going way back. I had told them, Dad's going to get out of politics, okay? Dad's no good at politics. So I'm going through political detox. I'm out, I'm clean, though every 4 years I need a patch, okay? And they didn't understand that, but I said, I want to start writing adventure stories with assassinations and car chases and explosions. The little boys, they were like, all right, that we're in. Will you be home more? Yes, I think I will be home more. They like that. So I said, but Daddy doesn't know how to write a novel. He has never read a novel. I mean, I've read them, but I don't really like novels. Christian novels, less. But that's, okay, so anyway, Daddy doesn't have a story, doesn't know what he's doing. So let's pray Jeremiah 33:3, right? It was a little Bible lesson before they were all in bed. And I said, the Bible says, God says, call to me and I will answer you and I will show you great and mighty things that you do not know. I said, that's the perfect verse for Daddy. Yeah. I don't know how to do it, but I sense that God wants me to do it. I could be wrong. Boys, sometimes you have an idea and you're wrong.
Yep.
But I don't think I'm wrong. I just wanted to teach our boys, Lynn and I wanted to teach our boys how to walk with Jesus when it wasn't going so great.
Wow.
And there was no promise that it was going to get great, just that this is something I thought I should do. And I wanted our boys to know, no matter what, you can dream. You can say, God, what could I do that I'm not doing? And that's okay.
Yeah.
You don't have, it doesn't have to be successful. So this is the process. And then, yeah, we got the deal. The book released in November of 2002. And now we were in a national debate, a global debate. Should we go to the war with Iraq or not? This was the conversation. Secretary of State Colin Powell was testifying before Congress and before the United Nations, and this was the global discussion. So this book enters. No one's ever heard of me. No one's ever heard of this book, which is called The Last Jihad. And suddenly, I'm on Sean Hannity. I'm on Rush Limbaugh. In fact, I had been one of the things I had done, which I enjoy, but I wasn't that helpful. I had been a writer and a researcher for Rush Limbaugh. So I'd send him an advance copy, hoping that he would say something nice about it on the air. He calls me and he goes, Rosenberg, I didn't know you could write. I'm like, well, thanks a lot, Rush. How many years did I work for you writing? No, I didn't know you could write fiction. I didn't have the heart to tell him that all my liberal friends thought I was writing fiction for Rush. He goes, this is unbelievable. I want you on my show tomorrow. Now, Rush, as you may recall, and I loved Rush, and he was so kind to me, he never had a guest on. I mean, yeah, the president, maybe Vice President Cheney, Mr. Newt, right, Newt Gingrich, that's it. He certainly didn't have a young junior staffer from years earlier, but he spent 11 minutes praising this book. I basically didn't say anything, and it was amazing. And this thing hit #1 on Amazon. It was 11 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list. I was on 160 radio and TV shows and other interviews, and it was just, I suddenly had a career, but not just a career, it was a mission.
Wow. Okay, a little bit of a reset. It's a beautiful evening in Jerusalem, okay?
Amen.
We're going to be talking about a lot of things, but what we're really getting is how did you get here? How did 5 million books later? You write not only fiction, but nonfiction. Do you get that confused sometimes?
I don't, fortunately. I've told my journalist friends, again, you can write fake news, but you have to own it. There's a job for that. It's called being a novelist.
Yeah.
Now that I'm doing news and writing websites, all Israel news, all Arab news, I have to learn to compartmentalize.
Okay. So a novelist, a nonfiction writer, Epicenter, take right. Epicenter.
That was my first nonfiction book, yeah.
And what is your last nonfiction book?
The most recent was in September of 21, which is called Enemies and allies.
Got it.
And that was 20 years after 9/11. The question was, where are we? Who are our enemies? And who are our allies? Because this region, there are tectonic changes, and they affect every American, every European, every African. Things are changing. Every Asian. Things are changing in this region that are having huge impact. And yet most Christians haven't noticed, because they've been focused on COVID and closed churches and vaccination debates and political debates. So it's, as people sort of lift their eyes up, they're like, okay, what
is
something's changing.
Yeah.
What does it mean to us?
Yeah.
I was watching an interview that you did recently, and you were describing, for instance, just that way north is Lebanon. Hezbollah is basically the right arm of Iran.
Yes.
Iran has put 150,000 rockets in that part of the world there in Lebanon. And if Israel is being threatened and their reaction would be to wipe out their nuclear capabilities, how many of those missiles would head this way? I mean,
right.
This
wrote a novel
region,
on that.
Yeah.
The Beirut Protocol. That was my last novel. That's last year.
So,
yeah, that could be 4,000 missiles a day.
A day.
Landing on us.
So what I think I'm wanting to get to the point now, Joel, how this is going to play out in the lives of people that need to know what's happening here and have such interest in what's happening in and how it affects the world.
Well, Matt and Laurie, I'm really grateful. I mean, honored to be part of the TBN family, excited about launching this show in the fall. I think the Rosenberg Report seems like a good name. I still question your judgment because I've got a face for radio. But, you're the head of the world's largest Christian television network and series of networks, so you probably know better than me. So when you invited me to Dallas in December and said, I want to make you an offer you can't refuse, like this, I think this is important. Yeah. And it took me some time. I didn't disagree with your premise, but could I do that with all the things that I have going on? But I decided this, after a lot of prayer and seeking counsel, people said your message, if Matt Crouch wants to put that on TBN in prime time, that's really, you should do that. And I came to believe that was from the Lord, because I believe this is the epicenter. I don't believe it. I do believe it, but this is. God said it. So that means that the eyes of the nations are shifting more and more to here. It doesn't mean there aren't important things going on in other places in the world, but in the end, Jesus is coming there. He's not coming to Washington or Beijing or Moscow or London. He's coming here. And so Satan hates this place and these people, my people, because God loves us.
Wow.
And the spiritual battle for Jerusalem, for Israel, is tectonic. It's apocalyptic. Literally, the book of Revelation is written about this place. So it means that the Bible says that every person in the world will be affected by the spiritual battle that happens here, whether they believe in God or not, whether they read the Bible or not. But those of us who do, we ought to be aware of what God's saying and what it means for us. And I think your idea of let's start doing that on a weekly primetime basis and do it, in a sane way. There's a lot of people that get so excited about Bible prophecy that they get a little, they sound a little bit like they're from Area 51. Some of the people that build websites, it's like, dude, seriously, all the letters are capitalized and there's 92 exclamation points and there's fire and you're like, have some decaf. Really, have you read the end of the book? It's okay. But, and so a lot of preachers don't teach on prophecy because they don't want to be identified with the nuts. I get that. I don't want to be identified with the nuts. But 27% of the Bible is prophecy. It's important. There's more things important than only prophecy, but prophecy is just not getting taught. And connecting it to what's happening spiritually, geopolitically, economically, all that's important.
And so just take women in America. They're feeding their kids, they're getting their kids to school, they're working, they're taking care of parents, they're a lot of things going on. And sometimes you were talking about you lose sight of what's happening here, COVID, vaccine, whatever.
Right.
I think it's necessary to stress why we need to know what's going on here, how it affects us, and so I think that this program, yes.
Well, I'm going to use you as an example. Okay. Lori in the morning, if
like,
if she's up first, she has the remote and the coffee going, and she's flipping between Christian television and Fox News or some news channel, flipping back and forth because she has an innate need as a woman to know what's happening in the world, but she also has this desire to try to make sense of it and know the peace that passes understanding at the same time. Joel, I feel like everyone in our viewing audience wants to sit here in Israel with you and ask you what's going on. If we can do that from here every week into the homes of the TBN viewers, I believe we're going to have people that are going to just basically say, I can't believe we finally found the right guy with the right credentials, the right resume. And we get to think this weird thing called the pandemic a little bit because in that time you launched your news services. Okay, that put you in a new category to actually know what's going on in a way that you're going to inform us. I often say this, if there's a policy being debated in America, I am one of the least political people on earth, okay? Honestly. And I go and call Governor Huckabee, or I call this person, that person, the other person, and I say, why does this matter? Why does this policy matter? Does it really mean what I think it means, or what the mainstream media is saying it means? And I usually get
no.
No.
Usually.
But I usually get this very concise, complete understanding of what that policy is and what it really means. Joel, this is the center of the world. This is the epicenter of the world, Israel. And I think our audience and I and Laurie want to know, when Israel is here, what has America done this week to either be on the side of Israel or to not be on the side of Israel? And like you said, don't go after God's eye. The apple of his eye is Jerusalem. I think the Rosenberg report every week is going to fill a need in our audience. Truly. That is going to be, I think, profound. Jeremiah 33:3, I believe, is going to apply to this too. And I think all of whatever you want to call failure in your past has led you to the right place at the right time for the right reason, okay? And I think in the right season that we're in now. This Rosenberg report, we're going to take seriously. We're going to give you the assets that you need. And we want you to use this studio, which doesn't have a bad view.
It doesn't have a bad
we
view.
want you to be right here. A few years ago, this wouldn't have been possible. You didn't even live here, okay? His house is like 5 miles right over there.
5 minutes.
Okay?
5 minutes.
Okay, 5 minutes, okay?
I love it.
It's
5 miles is the Palestinian
longer.
Authority.
Yeah,
That's how close we are.
So you're here, you're close, you have access to the studio. The studio has direct connection to our main studios in America. This is the right time to do Rosenberg Report.
And you have such favor. So you're a Jew. You're
kind of Jewish.
Do your
On my dad's side. My mom's side is not Jewish, English Methodist WASP.
And your biggest question is, how can you be
Jewish and an evangelical? Give us a couple of those fun stories.
Oh my gosh, yeah, we were talking about this over dinner. It's true. Well, I'm so excited about this thing, and I want to say that we'll be dealing with the politics of this place, but we'll also be talking about really hopeful stories. Again, we talk about more Jews coming to faith, or at least listening to the gospel, more Muslims. I think we have to mix this show with, okay, if there's threats and we have to talk about them like, the watchman on the wall, Ezekiel 33, we have to warn if something's happening. But there's great and exciting things happening. And I want to both share that news. I want to do commentary and analysis so people understand what does it mean and what does it mean to me. Like, again, as you said, I think that challenges and threats are important, but also the hope that the fact that this Israel exists. Yeah. Again, I think most people, even Christians, I'm talking about Christians, they don't even fully understand that every time you hear about Israel on the news, it's an evidence to an atheist, to an agnostic, to someone of another faith or no faith at all. The God of the Bible is real. He's legit. Like this is happening. I said all that, and then I totally lost track of what you were actually asking me. I was really responding to your question, but then you had your own.
It was.
Sorry. I'll be really great at this television thing. It's going to be
great.
Welcome to my world, baby.
I don't know what's going to happen.
It was one of your fun stories about how when you go into some political person's office and they ask you.
Right. Okay. So, So when I was on that first book tour for The Last Jihad, my publicist had a hard time even getting radio or TV shows to book me because they'd never heard of me. and so they went to my hometown and they tried to get every radio station that, say, hey, this is your hometown kid, he wrote this novel. Nobody would have me on except the host of an acid rock, hard rock radio station that I never listened to. Okay?
Not Howard Stern or
well, it was
kind of like
the Rochester, New York equivalent of Howard Stern. I never listened to that, but
I'm sorry.
Anyway, the guy was like, he wrote a novel about. Okay, send it to me. Anyway, he has me on day 2 of the launch, right? And he's like, and he had such a funny style, dude, what? This is whack, dude. You wrote this novel, and. How did you know? How did you know? You wrote this novel where it opens with a kamikaze attack by radical Islamist terrorists coming in into an American city? Dude, how did you know that was going to happen? I said, well, I didn't know it was going to happen. His name was Brother Weeze, which is an interesting name. Anyway, I said, I didn't know. I was just writing a novel. He goes, all right, but dude, seriously. Then this is the opener, and it leads to this war with Iraq, and now the president's talking about we might go to war with Iraq. I mean, dude, seriously, that's whack. How did you know? And so we try to talk about that, and I was trying not to crack up, but so he's taking me down this road, and what's my background, and what are my insights, and then he goes, all right, now, dude, seriously, are you a Hebe? I'm like, a what? He goes, are you a Hebe? A Hebrew. I said, like a Hebrew national hot dog? What are you asking me? I'd never been called this. It's not a nice term, by the way, to say. He goes, no, are you Jewish? I said, well, I'm Jewish on my dad's side. I'm not on my mom's side. All right. He goes, all right, so you're Jewish. He goes, and then he says, I'm Jewish too. I said, you're Jewish? And I thought Brother Weeze, I thought he was a Jesuit or something. I didn't know what he was. So he goes, all right, now I got to ask you. I read your whole novel this weekend, and at the end, you have this weird scene where these people are like, hey, I could die tomorrow from terrorism. What's going to happen when I die? Maybe I need Jesus. He goes, dude, are you an evangelical? Are you a messianic? Are you a Jesus freak? And he, the way he said it was like some radioactive toxic cocktail that you're about to. And I was like, well, Mr. Weeze, I believe in Jesus.
Brother Weeze.
Yeah, brother. Yes, I believe in Jesus. I'm an evangelical. And he goes, dude, I don't understand. How can you be Jewish and believe in Jesus? Now I'm thinking, Lord, are you serious? This is like the 3rd interview I've done. Yesterday I did Sean Hannity Radio, then Sean Hannity Television. This is now interview 3, and he's asking me, how can you be Jewish and believe in Jesus? I'm like, I wasn't prepared for the question, but I love that question. I just never been asked it.
Wow.
On radio in my hometown. So anyway, I'm like, well, Mr. Weeze, it's an interesting story. I don't know that you have time right now to get into it on your show. He goes, all right, no, seriously, dude. To meet a novelist that writes fiction that basically comes true, that's interesting. But to meet a Jew who believes in Jesus, this is a story I got to hear, son.
Wow.
I'm going to have you over the break. Hold on. So I tell my story. So that would have been what we call in Hebrew dayenu. This alone would have been enough. But it happened, not quite as colorfully as that, on many of the next 160 shows that I did. But what the craziest thing is, a few years later, an Arab man who was the minister of religion in his particular Arab country and in charge of 33,000 mosques in his country read one of my novels and contacted me and said, dude, no, he said, I read one of your novels and I'm curious, could I come and have dinner with you? Sure. And we had a wonderful time. Then he invited me to come to his country, and then he had a dinner for me in his home with various senior officials. And he said, ever since I met you in Washington, this is where we lived at the time, I've been meaning to ask you, and now you're here, you're in my home, welcome to my country. I have to ask you, aren't you Jewish? Isn't Rosenberg Jewish? Yes, it is. Don't you believe in Jesus? Yes, I do. I don't understand. And here's a top Islamic leader. How can you be Jewish and believe in Jesus?
My goodness.
I'm like, Lord, are you serious? This is really happening? This guy's in charge of 33,000 mosques, and that's his first question once I sit down in his home? Fast forward. I'm in the White House. I'm having lunch with Vice President Pence. He's a friend. He and Karen are readers of my novels, so I particularly appreciate that. And he had invited me to come and sit down with him because of all these meetings I'd had with Arab leaders. And he goes, follow me. I want to take you into the Oval Office. Really? I had lived in Washington for 24 years. Nobody had ever invited me in. Mostly I think they'd banned me. Like, no, we're definitely not having that guy. I don't know, but we walk in. The first person I see is Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Now, he's a friend, a reader of the novel, so God bless him. I see John Bolton, friend, or at least acquaintance, doesn't read the novels, but that's what unconditional love is, right? You have to love people even if they don't read the novels. I mean, you know. And then I meet the president. And Pence introduces me, this is my friend Joel, we've known each other for years, he's a novelist, he's an evangelical leader. And Trump goes, well, it's great to meet you. Why don't you, come on, sit down, let's talk. And Pence says, well, no, I know we have the lunch with the Czech prime minister who's arriving at any moment, but Joel's on the campus, we had lunch, I just thought you two should meet for a moment. No, come, sit down. So Trump sits behind the resolute desk, Pence sits here, Pompeo, Bolton. And I'm sitting here, and I would love to tell you, Matt and Laurie, that I had some profound biblical insight of, the Spirit was upon me. No, what was happening was I kept thinking of the little Sesame Street ditty. One of these things is not like the other. One of these things just doesn't belong. What am I doing here? And he goes, Joel, tell me a little bit about yourself. Now, I'm not on the schedule. There's no plan for me to meet him. So, but before I can say anything, he goes, no, wait, Mike, Vice President Pence, did you just call Joel an evangelical? Yes, Mr. President. Joel, are you an evangelical? Yes, Mr. President. But isn't your name Rosenberg? Oh, yes, sir.
Wow.
Isn't that Jewish? Well, on my dad's side, yes. My mom's side, no. Yeah, okay, whatever, you're Jewish. So he's like, I don't understand. How can you be Jewish and believe in Jesus? I'm like, Lord, seriously? My first ever meeting in the Oval Office with a sitting president, this is the first question I'm being asked? How can you be Jewish and believe in Jesus? That was a fun conversation. And this is happening all over the world. It happens with Muslim leaders. It happens all over. And I love that conversation, of course. It's not what I expect the first thing to be. Of course, I always want an opportunity to talk about my faith if someone's interested. But I have to admit, it's not that I don't believe God can open a door. It's just that I'm a Russian Jew, so I'm a pessimist by nature. Okay, this glass is not half full. This glass is half empty, and my nature is that this glass is cracked and leaking. That's how I look at the world in a carnal, natural way. Now, in the spirit, okay, wonderful, but so I don't expect good things to happen. Okay, I know God can do it. I just don't think He's going to do it with me because I have a history.
But that's why He has to make it so clear. So the first thing they
so
ask
even I
you
can
is,
get
how can you be a Jew in Jesus? Because it's going to take you a minute.
Yeah. Well, my wife, Lynn, God bless her, she really does have a spiritual gift of discernment. I have the gift of obliviousness. Okay, I'm not the only man that has it. I think that's why Jesus says on the to the men on the road to Emmaus, oh, foolish men and slow of heart to believe. I mean, every woman's life verse. But I do think, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but God has been very merciful, and He's opened doors that I just don't expect, but I'm excited about.
Isn't it amazing?
It's beautiful.
That God kind of specializes in that.
Yeah.
Using the least likely to do the most important task. Gideon with his 300, Esther, the little orphan that becomes queen and saves saves your people.
Well,
you're Jewish.
I'm Jewish on my father's side, not on my mother's side.
Well,
That's
just
right.
think
You're
of all the
Jewish.
people watching right now.
What's that?
Just think of all the people that are watching right now that feel the same way that you did back in 2001 in January when you were going, okay, God, could
What
you
do
just
I do? Could you
just
throw me
give
a bone? Yeah.
All I have is
Give me
these
a
little
hint.
fish.
All I
But
have.
that's the prayer, I think.
Yeah.
Even more than Jeremiah 33:3, it's that idea that you took this little boy,
Yeah.
and he just gave what he had, but it wasn't, how was it going to feed 5,000 people?
Yeah.
That's just men, by the way. By the way, I think there were many more women and children that Jesus fed, but the fact that 5,000 men showed up at a Bible study, that was interesting, and that's what the Bible wants to record. Of course the women were there, but anyway, all that to say, but Lord, would you take what I think I have nothing to offer, but you did make me, and maybe the realization that I don't have much to offer is in fact the turning point.
At TBN, our mission is to use every available means to reach as many individuals and families as possible with the life-changing gospel of Jesus Christ.
Thank you for helping make the gospel of grace go around the world.
Without you, we couldn't do it. God bless you.